Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, and I am excited to be here once again with Kristen of the Fantasy Cafe talking about sci-fi and fantasy book recommendations. Last time she was here, we got like five or six that were just amazing. I definitely was like, I'm going to put all of these on my TBR pile, and then my TBR pile fell over and hurt somebody. So I appreciate her. But before we get started with recommendations, I just want to say a couple of things. One is thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs. And I'd like to thank Kristen for letting us share this program with other libraries because, of course, when libraries work together, we make magic, like fantastical magic. um, I will be sending out a list of all the books that Kristen recommends tonight, so you don't feel like you have to be scribbling them down furiously. I will send them out. You can relax and just enjoy the talk. If you have questions, please feel free to use the chat or put them in the Q&A, and I will make sure to ask Kristen throughout our talk about the recommendations. It's a quick 30 minutes, so I hope you enjoy our conversation. Kristen, tell me a little bit about Fantasy Cafe. And well, I should go back and say thank you so much for being here, but tell me a little bit about Fantasy Cafe. How did that happen?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It happened, well, a long time ago. I'm trying to remember when. I think it was 2006, maybe. I've been doing it for quite a while. 2007, I think. And it just happened because I always loved reading. And at one point, I was getting it more into fantasy and sci-fi. And I discovered book blogs and was like, oh, this is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really seriously thinking about starting one, but then my husband was like, you should start one. And so I thought about it more and I ended up just going ahead and starting one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you do some really good things in there. And I'll put the link to Fantasy Cafe in my recap email to everybody as well, because you just have some amazing things. Like you have a women in sci-fi in April, and you have a lot of guest speakers and things like that. I think that's awesome. I love everything about it. And which brings us to today, in which you are making book recommendations that you've really enjoyed recently or
Mhm.
in memory. So tell us what's our first one.
Okay. Yeah, some of these are recent, some are not so recent. This is one that is not as recent. This is Lips Touch Three Times by Laini Taylor. And this is a collection of three young adult short stories. They're sort of longish short stories. And the publisher and author often describe them as being stories about kissing. And while that's technically not untrue, if you're specifically hoping for romance, you might not be happy with all of the stories. So I think of them more as being three dark fairy tales or supernatural tales. So the first one is called Goblin Fruit. And this is the shortest one, the collection. And it's sort of an homage to Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market,
Mm-hmm.
about a girl from a big weird family who grew up hearing about how her grandmother saved her sister from the goblins when they were both children. And this girl is very much like her grandmother's sister was, and the goblins are drawn to her. And this story is about what happens when the goblins decide to set their sights on this girl.
Mm-hmm.
The next story in this is called Spicy Little Curses Such as These. And it starts with an old woman who's an ambassador to hell. And she's given the opportunity to save the lives of 22 children if she'll just curse this one newborn baby.
Oh,
And she ends up deciding it's worth the cost. But when she curses the girl, she also gives her a gift so that as she won't actually trigger the effects of her curse until she's old enough to realize what she's doing and what the consequences could be. So most of the story is when this girl is 18 years old. She's never triggered her curse. She's kind of questioning whether or not it's even true. And she's falling in love for the first time with this boy who wants her to just forget about this curse. So this story is kind of about, does she decide it's not real and what are the consequences of whichever choice she makes? The third story, Hatchling, is the longest story. It's probably a novella, I would guess at the very least. The other two might be too, but they're definitely not as long. So this one opens with a teenage girl who wakes up one morning and realizes that one of her eyes change color overnight. And she has all these strange memories. And she realizes that, oh, this is not my eye. These are not my memories. And when she tells her mother about this, her mother completely flips out. And she realizes this seems to have something to do with the strange traumatic past that her mother has kept secret and never talked to her about.
Mhm.
So this story follows multiple characters. It tells the story of what happened in the past and how it ties into whatever's happening in the present.
Mhm.
And this is it's a pretty disturbing story. If you're someone who likes to have content warnings, you might want to have some going into that one if you can find them.
Mhm.
Um, so I've loved everything that Laini Taylor has ever written that I've read. I still haven't read a couple of her books. I don't know why, because I love her, but she writes really amazing prose. Her descriptions are just so unique. She doesn't use the same metaphors you've heard 8,000 times. And this one in particular, even though it's not my favorite story, I think the descriptions in Goblin Fruit of the longing this girl has are especially well written. She really captures how much she wants to be a certain way and a certain type of person. And it's the sort of desire that draws the goblins to her.
I love goblins.
Uh,
I don't know
it's
why.
a,
I love goblins and gargoyles. I don't know why. Probably because of the TV show. But
yeah.
um, I'm actually interviewing Laini Taylor on a panel at Boston Book Festival in
Oh,
October.
nice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to pick your brain about her a little bit because I also really love her. I remember reading her first series, which just seemed to like explode, out of nowhere. I,
Oh, her young adult series.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
she
can't
actually
remember.
had a middle grade one before that I started with.
Wow, so she can do anything. Um, that's great. So, okay, Laini Taylor, everybody, read Laini Taylor. What's up next?
Let's see. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention is that the hardcover edition has some really beautiful pictures. Like here you can see one where the this is the old woman who was the ambassador to hell when she was younger.
Mhm. Does she have an illustrator or did she create those illustrations?
Her illustrator is Jim D. Bartholow. That's actually her husband.
Ooh, okay, wow. I love it.
And I also really enjoyed with that one that she actually included adult characters that were important to the story.
Hmm.
And she can write everything so well.
Hmm. I
So
would
the
agree.
next so the next book I have up here is The Reformatory by Tanana Reeve Dew.
I just love these authors. You're gonna have to excuse me. But I thought she wrote horror.
This one is kind of horror. So this one is actually it's a standalone novel. It's kind of historical. It's kind of horror with paranormal elements.
Hmm.
And it's won both horror awards and fantasy awards. It won the World Fantasy Award. It won the Bram Stoker Award. It won the Shirley Jackson Award, and a bunch of others. And this one follows two black siblings living in 1950s in Florida. And it's about the main part of the story kicks off because one of them, the younger one, Robbie, tries to defend his sister from the unwanted advances of this son of a powerful white man in their town. And they end up getting into a bit of a scuffle, and her younger brother kicks the white boy. And so he is punished by being sent to spend 6 months in a segregated reform school for boys. And the story follows both siblings, the brother as he's trying to survive the reform school and learn the rules, and also he learns some things about the past because he has the ability to see haints or the spirits of the boys who've died there.
Mm. Oh,
And the
wow.
uh, and the other part of the story follows his sister Gloria as she's trying to figure out how to get him out because she's not confident it will be only 6 months, especially since she thinks he's there more because of their father, who was kicked out of town by the Ku Klux Klan. And this is just a really interesting book. I read it because I like history combined with supernatural, and I heard a lot of good things about it. And also because I'd read another book by the author I really liked, My Soul to Keep.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is one where Have you read that?
Yes, so good.
Yeah, it's so good. I need to reread that and finish the series because for some reason I haven't, even though it's really good.
Well, things get in the way, but that is it. Yeah. So definitely this one. Now she's like I said, it's got horror, you said horror, paranormal, sort of historical fiction almost.
Right.
Um, that's great. I love it. I love that she incorporates so many genres into her storytelling.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and the history is actually the most horrifying part. She actually based this story on learning about a great uncle she had that
oh,
she'd never realized she had until they were contacted because he actually died in one of these reform schools when he was only 15 years old.
mhm,
So this book was written in part to shed light on that and honor his memory.
mhm.
And it's
Well,
just,
it immediately made me think of Emmett Till, and I thought going to a reformatory school is probably not as bad as what happened to him. He maybe just whistled at a white woman and he got beaten up and killed. So yeah, it is that we talk about this like humanity being the most horrifying thing, like,
mhm.
that it's not the supernatural, it's not, it's humans who are not very nice.
So it's just a riveting story. Both sibling stories are riveting. Some people didn't like Gloria's as much, but I kind of like that it showed the perspective of someone who's still a child, but she's kind of responsible for a brother because their mother's dead. Their father had to leave town,
Hmm.
and she just feels a lot of guilt and responsibility over it. And I like getting her perspective.
Hmm.
And the ending of that one just kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. It's just a really good book.
Hmm. Excellent. I love it. Like I said, I love that author, so I'll read anything by them.
Mhm.
And what's
So
next?
next up, I have The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio.
Hmm.
So this is a fairly short book. It's a standalone young adult novel that's a retelling of the story, The Tale of Shim Chong, which is a Korean folk tale about a woman who threw herself into the sea as a sacrifice. So, in this version of the story, the girl who throws herself into the sea is actually a girl named Mina, who decides to take Shim Chong's place because her brother and Shim Chong are in love. And after she throws herself into the sea, she finds herself in the spirit realm. And she follows this red string of fate to find that the sea god appears to be this boy who's not really much older than she is. And he seems to be in some sort of magical slumber. And she realizes that, maybe he's not actually malicious. Maybe there's just some sort of curse on him. And if she can figure out what's going on, maybe they can quit throwing girls into the sea every year to stop these destructive storms that are happening. Um, and basically, she's faces some obstacles in her quest, but she also meets a bunch of spirits who try to help her along the way.
Hmm.
This is a book that is often recommended for fans of Studio Ghibli movies. The author mentioned she was inspired by them, especially Spirited Away. And she also mentions being inspired by whimsical young adult novels like Howl's Moving Castle.
Mm.
And it's a book that's about community, it's about myths and the stories we tell and the connection that can be found in stories. And I also just really love the main character and her determination to save people.
Hmm.
Um, she's just somebody who she has to try, even if she's not sure she'll succeed.
Hmm.
And I also really love that this didn't follow into the not like other girls trope, where it felt like both she and Shim Chong were respected and admired for their decisions, whether it was to go off and save the world or just stay with the people you loved. They both admired each other, they both thought highly of each other, and it just treated both girls like, their decisions were very worthy of respect.
Hmm.
Just a lovely story. It's one that, I consider a comfort read. I loved it the first time I read it. I reread it a little while ago, and I think I loved it even more and decided it's a definite favorite book.
Is I'm a huge fan of Avatar, the TV show, and it
Hmm.
kind of gives me that sort of whimsical spirit world, human world connection. Did
Hmm.
you feel that at all, or am I way off?
Um, I love Avatar too. I could sort of see it, but it didn't really make me think of it. But maybe
Oh,
that's also just because I went into it thinking more of Spirited Away, because I did know that the author had talked about that being an inspiration.
Oh, great movie, by the way, if anybody hasn't
Hmm.
seen it. Great. How did you discover this book? Just really quickly, because I know we're getting a little behind, but it's such an unusual story.
I don't remember actually. I just, I mean, I know I found it somehow online. I don't remember specifically where I heard about it first.
hmm Oh, that's all right. I just wondered because like I'm always looking for places to find books
Hmm.
that would interest me. So, great. So, what is up next?
This is Blood Over Bright Haven,
Ooh.
this is the hardcover edition. It was originally self-published and then it came out in hardcover. So this is one that it's another standalone. It's set in an epic fantasy world, and it's got a computer programming based magic system. And it's often considered dark academia, but if you're into dark academia that's about school settings, it's not really that kind. It's more about the research and studying part of it.
Mhm. Who was the author on that one?
M.L. Wang.
Emily. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I
That's
must have
okay.
forgotten it. Um, so basically, this one follows two different main characters. They're living in a domed city that offers them safety because people outside the dome sometimes just literally unravel. So this follows the first woman who became a mage, a high mage at their academy, and the janitor at the academy. Because all the men at the academy decided it would just be hilarious to make the janitor this woman's assistant, give her somebody who knew nothing about magic.
Mm,
And so the two end up working together and they make a horrifying discovery about their city. And a lot of what I liked about this book was just it was really different. Toward the beginning, it might have felt a bit like, okay, I've read this story before, or at least part of it, maybe not the janitor story so much, but Siona, the female mage's story, kind of started off feeling a bit familiar with her passing the test, proving she could do this. But this is really not a feel-good book about breaking glass ceilings. It's more about shedding light on intersectional problems and people's sort of resistance to breaking established norms
hmm
and systems. And I really like that Sayona was multifaceted. She was messy, she was ambitious, she could be ignorant, she was also brave and smart.
hmm
And it's a book that you might be interested in reading if you like things like Ursula K. Le Guin's The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelus or R.F. Kuang's Babel.
hmm
Although, be aware this book has absolutely no subtlety whatsoever. That often bothers me. In this case, I thought there were enough interesting things about it that it didn't, but
hmm
it does lack subtlety.
I like the idea of them being sort of the underdog. They've been put in this sort of like a ha 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 position, and yet they go ahead and, save the day. Um, that seems like a worthwhile, read to me.
Yeah, save the day might not quite be what happens, but like
Well,
I
now
said,
I'm
it's a little
curious
different.
because a fantasy doesn't necessarily have to have a happily ever after. Like,
Hmm.
it just has to have a resolution to a problem, right?
Hmm.
And it could be using magic or, you know, uh, dark magic or anything like that to resolve it. So you don't know actually sometimes if it's going to end up in a good place or in a not so good place. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a book that has tragedy. It's also a book that has hope. It's got a
Okay.
bit of both.
Oh,
But
that's good.
it but it's not something to read if you want something that's really going to be, a comfort read. It's not that
Mhm.
sort of story.
Okay. Well, good. It's good to have a good variety, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. What's up next?
This is one that's a bit less harrowing than that was.
Thank
The
you.
10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow.
Oh.
So this one it's another standalone. It's a portal fantasy that's set in the United States in the 1900s.
Hmm.
And it follows a girl named January, who's a lonely girl who's mostly alone. She's living in this big house owned by the man who employs her father, and her father's gone most of the time because of his work. And one day when she's 7, she finds this door in the middle of a field, and she ends up opening the store, and she finds this big white city with a silver sea. But when she tries to tell people about this store, they accuse her of making things up, and she ends up being punished for it. So when she's 17 and is doing a better job of, not doing things that will get her accused of being willful, that's when most of the story takes place. And she discovers this book one day called The 10,000 Doors. And this is a book that changes her life. It's an account of the sort of doors she found and how they changed the author's life. And it's about true love and adventure.
Hmm.
And this is just one of those books that, it feels like it was made for bibliophiles and fantasy fans.
Hmm.
And it's really difficult to describe because it's about a lot, but it's one of those that's a tribute to stories. It's an ode to dreamers and outsiders, and it's kind of an ode to people who dare to write their own stories even when society is telling them this isn't who they're supposed to be.
Hmm.
And it's another one with really beautiful writing, reminds me quite a bit of like reading Laini Taylor. She just has this beautiful imagery that's unlike anything you've ever read before. And it also includes parts from the 10,000 Doors, the book she finds, which are also really wonderfully done and have these really delightful footnotes. And this is just one of those books that feels like it's destined to be a classic. It just feels like it's always going to be relevant to people who love reading.
Hmm. And not that it's a cut and dry thing, but is that book for what is it YA? Is it for adults more? Because Alex Harrow, I've read, really writes for both.
I'm actually glad you asked that because I actually had something I meant to say about that and I forgot to. It's technically an adult novel, but I can see that some young adults might like it considering the age of the protagonist and also that she kind of has a coming of age story.
Mm-hmm.
So technically adult, but some young adults might like it too.
Hmm. It's so funny because I think there's a lot of YA books that adults really like. It's not usually the other way around. So to me, that's a strength of the author that they can write to both.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right, we have a few more minutes. Let's try to get to through a couple more.
Okay. We've got here Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor.
Oh, I love her too.
Yeah, this is probably the most interesting 2025 release I've read.
Mm,
It's just a really interesting book, does really interesting things. It's kind of a literary novel set in the near future. It's also kind of a sci-fi novel set in the distant future.
hmm.
It's a basically about an author. She's a Nigerian American woman who's been teaching creative writing and trying to get her novel published. But she ends up getting fired. Her novel is rejected yet again, and she ends up just writing this book that's completely different from anything she's ever written before
Hmm.
about robots in a distant future Nigeria.
Mm,
And she becomes very famous. And this book is about her life and her struggles with fame. And it also kind of ties in with her family and not fitting in. And it also has these extracts from her novel, Rusted Robots, about a robot who collects stories who's in Nigeria after humanity has died out and left most of the robots behind. So, like I said,
So
it's just really
is it more of a family story that interjects pieces of the sci-fi book?
kind of, but uh, I don't want to say too much about it, but I really love the way it tied everything together.
Mhm.
I don't want to spoil anything, but it's some of both, you
Okay.
know, and it touches on a lot of different things, though, with, the author's family, also in the future. And I really think this one would be a great book for like a book club or discussion group because there's just so many things that you can dive into.
Hmm. And it sounds like she also brings her own history, her own Nigerian history and background and culture into it as well.
Yeah, I actually got this because I saw her do a talk on it in April. And she did talk about it being, she didn't want to say it was too true to life, but it is the most autobiographical fiction book that she said she's written.
Mhm. Well, I'm definitely going to read that one because I love her.
Mm,
I'm surprised I haven't because I do love her.
mm.
But thank you for recommending that one. Like I said, when Kristen sent me her list, I just went like, yep, 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 all of it. Okay, so
Oh,
let's
glad
get
to hear it.
to let's do one more if we, and then we'll and like I said, I'll send the whole list to everybody after the talk.
Okay. So this one is Beggars in Spain by Nancy Kress,
Hmm.
which is another science fiction novel that I also think like that one would be a really good book for a book club or discussion group because there's just a lot to it and a lot going on. This was a Hugo and Nebula Award nominated novel based on a Hugo and Nebula Award winning novella
Mhm.
that was later expanded.
Okay.
So this book's kind of it's hard to sum up in a limited amount of time, but it's about the United States if it had followed a different path. Basically, it was published in the 1990s, 93, I think, and it started in what was then the future of 2008 and went into the 2090s.
Hmm.
So it's basically about a couple of different things happened. Mainly, someone invented cheap energy and brought it to the United States. And some advances were made in genetic engineering that led to the development of these very intelligent people who did not require sleep and also did not age.
Hmm.
So this story is about the conflict that kind of arises because of that. It follows a few different characters. It mostly follows a woman named Lisha. It starts actually before she was born. She was one of the first sleepless, and she became a lawyer. And she kind of disagreed with how some of them decided to do things with splitting off and making their own society. So a lot of it's about her and her family. Later parts are largely about the people who did split off, their leader, Jennifer, and mostly her eventual granddaughter, Miranda, who are in this community that was all sleepless people and what happens with them.
Hmm.
And I first reread this when it was still set in I first read this when it was still set in the future. I recently reread it and it still feels incredibly timely since the author really seemed to hit the nail on the head when it came to things like American attitudes and the future of the internet and social media. But I
Hmm.
also love that first and foremost, this is still a story. Sometimes it gets philosophical, but you still feel like, the author doesn't diverge too much into going into other territory. And it's one that does a really good job with both showing social change, but also having kind of personal stories like Leisha's whole arc, where she
Hmm.
kind of has to figure out, okay, why do I not fully believe this philosophy that my father and the other sleepless believe in? And she kind of has an arc where she discovers that, but also loses faith in her work as a lawyer. And she just has a big arc throughout the whole book.
Hmm. Now, are the sleepless actually people, or like, or are they like data on Star Trek, like not robots, but engineered? They're not actually human. I'm not quite sure how to say that.
There, you mean like, do they have a certain way of behaving that's a little different, or?
No, just genetically, are they human or are
Oh, yeah,
they?
they're human.
Yeah, but they just don't sleep or age.
Right. They don't
Mhm.
sleep or age.
So how do they get from like baby to adult?
Basically they do grow up in adults. After that, um, their organs tend to just regenerate and they
Mhm.
stay young, so they can die of natural causes. I mean, they can die of like accidents or stuff, but they're not likely to just have their bodies give out,
Mhm.
at
I like-
least.
That is so cool. I
Yeah, and they
wish
have all this free time because they don't have to sleep.
exactly. I was like, I would give up sleep if I could live for, forever,
Right.
as long as I didn't get hit by a truck. So I love that. I love that you found that before it came out and now are rereading it and enjoying
Yeah.
it just as much and maybe in a different way, because I do
Hmm.
that a lot too.
Yeah, it's
Kristen,
interesting.
thank you so much for this. It's been wonderful. Your suggestions are everything that I would love to read. So I appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Absolutely. And for everybody who's here, thank you for being here. And I will send out that list. And I really hope, what is this? Kristen is eligible for Best Fan Writer and Fantasy Cafe is eligible for Best Fan Zine for the Hugo Awards just dropping this year. Amazing.
Thanks for the reminder, Renee.
You do
It's
have
great.
fans here, of course. So, yeah, I'll send that list out. And I hope you all have a wonderful night and some good reading happening in the next little while because we'll see you, Kristen, again in November. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks,
Bye.
Kristen.
Thanks, everyone.